You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Let's break down what it is, how it works. You said it's basically copper wires around these either sticks or trees or wooden planks or something like that.
Yep, exactly it. So natural wood, so not chemically treated, or best if you can find wood that hasn't been loading down with pesticides or chemical.
Does it need specific type of wood work better than others?
Anything works. Anything works.
Okay.
I use 5 or 6 different types of wood, whatever's on my property, and they all work the same. And you take a piece of wood, then the bigger is better in electroculture, and you wrap copper wire around it. And this is millennia old, so it actually works on more of a flat earth principle. So if you are in the north, someplace where the ground freezes in the winter, or you get an appreciable amount of snow, you wrap it clockwise. Meaning when you wrap the stick, right? So you hold the stick in front of you and you turn it clockwise as the copper wraps around it. Okay. If you're in the south where the ground doesn't freeze, then you wrap it counterclockwise. I actually incorporate a little bit more of sacred geometry into my antennas as well, because there's a bunch of different aspects to electroculture. There's just your basic antenna with the copper wrapped around it, and the copper doesn't extend much past the antenna. Then there's something called a Luigi coil, which is a coil of copper. And normally they put it on a copper antenna and stick it in a pot, and it looks really pretty. I took the two and combined them together. So I put a Luigi coil above the copper antenna as well. And then there's also something called a Lavrovsky coil, which is basically just a circle, a piece of copper wire on the bottom that's open, and you put the opening toward the north. And it essentially captures electrons, right? So how electroculture works is it takes the excess energy from the environment, because we're all energy. There's energy all around us, everywhere you are. And
just like this etheric energy that surrounds us at all times.
The ether, right? Takes the excess energy from the environment and it focuses it into your soil. So essentially it's bringing light to your soil, because your plants need more than just water to live. They need, nutrients and minerals, and everything needs light to survive. You're bringing light to dark, and it makes your root system to start grow a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot faster. But then it also attracts all of the good pesties, earthworms, things like that aerate your soil, and bring nutrients and minerals, all the good microbiome that creates a really rich, healthy soil. And above, it attracts all kinds of pollinators. So my garden is full right now, and it's getting a little chilly. It's October. I'm in the south, so it doesn't really get chilly, not like it does by you, but here it's been a little chilly. It was like 50 this morning. I was like, this is not for us. No. But it's full of butterflies and dragonflies and bumblebees, honeybees. I mean, I have a dozen honeybees, and I don't have a hive that I've been able to find, but I've got honeybees all over my garden, and that's just helping with all that pollination. But then the coolest aspect, and I don't know if this was the electroculture by itself or combining it with the Fibonacci sequence, but being on the coast of Georgia, we have a penchant for really rough storms, right? So the start of the summer, we had a pretty nasty hailstorm where, everybody's gardens got wiped out. Wiped out. My kid, my 16-year-old, I'm teaching him to drive. He actually had to drive home in this hailstorm. And I was like, well, you're learning, kid. It was crazy. Video of it it was insane. It was really bad. We got home. The hail stopped about a quarter mile from our house and picked up about a quarter mile past our house. We had no damage whatsoever. None. Nothing. Then about a month later, we had a tornado. Took out the Dollar General, took out the nursery that's kind of about a half mile away. Same thing. There was damage right up to about a quarter mile from our house. And then about a quarter mile past our house, it started again. But our house, our acreage, our property and the houses around us, absolutely nothing. No, I had one pine cone cut a 2-inch swath through a salad bed. That was all the damage that I had. And then
any theories on why that would be, how that would be possible?
Well, it gets even better. So then a dahlia comes through, and a dahlia went across Florida, And it literally went basically right over us. I mean, by the time it got to us, it wasn't that bad. 70-mile-an-hour winds, we brought everything in. The people around the corner from us, the siding slid off their house. A big tree fell across the road. One of the neighbors a couple doors down lost a tree limb. My 14-foot okra was still standing at the end. My 6-foot tall green pepper plants that have, 6 or 7 little baby green peppers on every branch, every single one of them is still there. Again, no damage whatsoever. And on my pond has been overflowing for about a year. So all the pine trees that line the pond, all their root systems have been just sitting and soaking in this water. And I was very afraid that at least, 1 or 2 of them was going to come down and go across the pond and hit the house or hit the deck or something like that. Nothing moved, nothing. And I was like, well, how is that even possible? So I started looking into electroculture as storm protection. And apparently there are people that make giant copper rods and put them together, usually in a Fibonacci sequence, and they call them storm busters, and they break up storms. And then my neighbor comes over and she was like, all right, what are you guys doing? Like my immediate next door neighbor. She's like, what are you guys doing? I said, what are you talking about? She's like, I have watched storms, and we've watched this too, but she's like, I've watched storms break apart over your house and reform behind you. I said, well, I'm the only thing I can attribute it to is that we're using electroculture. She said, what is that? So I explained it to her, and she's like, I was gonna actually, and this was on September 12th. She said, I was gonna plant a garden, and I started doing research, and I just got overwhelmed. And so I thought I'd come ask you for help. She goes, but now I want you to make me some of these magic plant wands. I said, I can do that. And I'd had a bunch of people, because I've been teaching people how to use electroculture on Freedom Gardens for a year now.
Yeah.
We've talked about the history of it, and we documented when I built the gardens and how everything's grown and all that. So I was like, and I've had people reach out and say, well, I don't have access to wood. I don't have access to copper. I don't have the time. I'm just kind of lazy. Like, what do I do? So can you make me a magic plant wand? But then when my neighbor said it, I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So I didn't even call my husband. I called my graphic designer and I was like, hey, I need you to make me a logo. And I called one of my friends that's in marketing that sends me guests to our podcast. And I was like, hey, I want to do this. And I went and bought he and I talked about the name for a minute and came up with Electro Freedom. And I was like, book me on some shows. I'm launching a business. And I think in about 10 days, we'd bought the website, gotten the logo done, made some demos, got on a couple podcasts and launched the business with no inventory.
Right?
Plenty of ability to make inventory, but no inventory. I mean, I have a yard full of wood and tons of copper. That's not the issue. So then we're like, wow. So now we make antennas all day. And it's a blast.
It is fun.
It is.
It is fun.
But the big part was that because we really wanted to, make Mama H's farm a success. Like that's our dream. We want to get 110 acres in potentially the mountains of Tennessee and essentially have kind of a patriot refuge, combined with, as an outreach for survivors. That's it. Because we're all going to be survivors here soon in one way, shape, or form. It is so.
Now, let me ask you something.
Your own food.
You said the electroculture essentially breaks up storms. Does it ever rain? Do you ever have storms that naturally form?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we get good rain. In fact, it rained for a couple days the other day.
Yeah.
But we haven't had any damage. So it almost like there's a magnetic electro bubble over the house.